Chapter 152. Do you want it or not? After Zhouing got up and gave him a tale of silver, she told him about the tools he needed to buy, especially the grinding stone. The ones they had were shipped to the restaurant. As for the other tools they needed to make tofu, she could use the ones at home. After that, she went home. Seeing that it was still early, she wanted to go into her interspace to make a seafood feast. However, just as she was about to lock up, she saw Sister Tian walking over. She had no choice but to let her into the house. I haven't been here for a day, and it's rather cold in the house. Sister, please sit down first, and I'll start a fire. There's no need as it's just a few words. I'll leave after I'm done. Sure, what is it? Well, Dehua has been quieter than before and doesn't like to go out to play. So, I was wondering if you could let her help out in the restaurant. She doesn't need a paycheck, just 2 meals will do, and I just want her to be in contact with more people. After Zhouing heard this, she thought of the well-behaved and sensible Dehua and then of Chun Yang, who was always physically exhausted. Finally, she nodded and said, "That's no problem, so just let her follow Brother Tian to work every day." "Thank you so much, sister. I've caused you trouble." No. Also, I will give her a salary and arrange for her to work under a pastry chef. As for whether she can learn anything, it will depend on her. After hearing this, Sister Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. It was always a good thing to learn some craft. Once she learned it, it would be her own. In the future, she would be confident when she married into her in-laws' house. Thinking of this, she nodded. "I thank you on behalf of Dehua. You and your husband are really saviors of our family." "You're exaggerating, you've helped us a lot too. Just tell Dehua to learn well when she gets there." "Oh, of course. I'll let you get back to your job and tell Dehua the good news." Elder Sister Tian thanked Zhouing and hurriedly walked back. After she left, Zhouing locked the door and then started a fire. After adding some firewood, she entered her interspace to make a feast. When she was done, she opened the door and waited for Gu Qingrui to return. On the other end, Gu Qingrui was at the Gu residence. After telling Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao the recipes, he was about to leave when suddenly, Mrs. Liu called out to him, "Qingrui, aren't you trying to fool us? These few recipes aren't difficult. Take it or leave it. This is my wife's own recipe, and the rest is the craftsmanship taught to her by her master. Those are our restaurant signature desserts, and I can't give those to you." Gu Qingrui stated firmly, and he returned home with Heir Zhuang, who was playing with Gu Qingxi. "Darling, look at him." Mrs. Liu turned her head and wanted to complain about Gu Qingrui. However, Father Gu chided her. "I think you don't know what's good for you. If you think the recipe is plain, you can create one yourself." Indeed. Although these recipes are ordinary, they are suitable for selling in small shops. The lotus crisp you made is delicious, but how many customers bought it? Also, I've told you about the date cake, which is delicious and cheap. You're just lazy, reaching beyond your grasp and always thinking about making big money without doing any actual work. If you really can't do it, Mrs. Gua and Mrs. Sun will go to town, and you can stay here to do the housework. Madame Chiao said this, shaking her head in disappointment. "Mother, well, listen to you and try it tomorrow. We so happen to have some green beans at home." Mrs. Yao heard the anger in Madame Chiao's words and hurriedly assured her. But Madame Chiao didn't pay any more attention but looked at Mrs. Liu. "It's time for you to take care of Qingye's marriage. So, stop looking for some wealthy young lady. Just find a good-looking and capable farmer's girl with a tight-knit family." Chapter 153. Angry, but Qingye is, Mrs. Liu sternly retorted. The eldest son, Gu Chengxi's wife, was the legitimate daughter of a fourth-rank official. Mrs. Lu knew she shouldn't expect a girl of that standard with their family's current situation, but at least a girl better than Zhou. No matter what, she should at least be the daughter of a landlord. She would rather die than find an illiterate farmer's daughter to be her daughter-in-law. But before she could finish, Madame Chiao knocked the ground with her walking stick and scolded, "Look at the situation clearly, will you? We are deemed guilty by the officials. Any of our family members can't take the imperial examination for 3 generations, and can't be officials in court. Even if there is a wealthy young lady who is willing to marry Qingye, aren't you afraid that he would suffer in his in-laws' family in the future? Did you think that you would hold the pants in this marriage? You sure you aren't afraid she'll order you around like a maid? The daughter of a good family might not even be willing to marry into the family and suffer the anger of a bastard like you." "Mother, calm down. She's just bad-tempered." Father Goof saw his mother really get angry and quickly went forward to comfort her. He didn't expect Madame Chiao to push him away. "You're not any better, and don't keep thinking about restoring your former glory all day long. It's not so easy to achieve those without some luck. It's better to humbly settle our family's affairs and live a steady life. Down to earth, don't you even understand what that means? Look at Qingrui and his wife. It wasn't easy to go up the mountain to pick herbs and make tofu, but they still managed to get by. Look at you guys now." Madame Chiao was so angry that she gasped for breath, shook her head, and wiped her tears. "It's all my fault. If I had known that this day would come, I would have made you suffer more when you were young so that you wouldn't be so arrogant and have difficulty even making a living now." After that, she trembled, returned to her room, and didn't even finish eating her meal. Everyone else in the room stared at each other, not knowing what to say. "All right, let's eat. Mrs. Lu will bring food to Mother in a moment to apologize." After being stunned for a while, Father Gu finally returned to his senses and replied. Mrs. Lu was unwilling when she heard this, so she said to Gu Qingye, "Son, you go." Gu Qingye hesitated for a moment but still agreed. He followed Mrs. Gua to get the food. "Big brother, do you think Mother is envious of Qingrui and his wife?" Second uncle asked in a low voice. "Of course," Father Gu said thoughtfully. "Seeing Shengru's family life getting better while our days are getting worse, she must be angry." "You don't say. Qingrui and his wife are indeed capable. Of course, they work every day from early morning until late at night. Which one of us can take it? In the past, we always said that Mrs. Lu and the others couldn't see reality clearly, but we are the same. Our family really can't stand any more turmoil, not to mention that we still have to give the clan 30 taels of silver for the boat at the end of the year. So, we're not buying a boat. That's not realistic. Well, rent a boat when the river opens. But for now, let's think about what to transport or what business we can do. Otherwise, it's useless to have a boat. Tomorrow, you can go to the shop and keep an eye on them to see how they do business. Otherwise, if we continue to lose money like this, we won't even be able to have a meal next year." "Okay, I'll go to the shop and keep an eye on it tomorrow." Second Uncle Gu nodded. On the other side, Chow Lon Lon and the others who were exiled had reached the place of the snow disaster and met with many refugees who had fled. Chapter 154 Mother Chiao's death. Not to mention Chow Lon Lon and the others in exile, even the officers escorting them were unwilling to take another step forward. However, they couldn't explain themselves if they didn't send her to their destinations, so they could only vent their anger on Chow Lon Lon and the others. Especially Mother Chiao, whose health wasn't good, to begin with, and she hadn't done any vigorous exercise for many years. She had already reached her limit long ago in this journey. After she staggered and fell to the ground, an officer came forward and gave her 2 lashes with his whip. "Hurry up. If you dawdle any longer, I won't be able to complete my mission before the new year." Officer, please stop." My mother really can't walk anymore. Why don't we take a break? Chow Lon Lon kneeled and begged. When the others heard this, they immediately agreed. It was difficult to walk in the snow, they were all exhausted and couldn't move. Rest my ass. I want to rest, but look at this cold weather. Is there any place to rest? Or do you want to freeze to death in the snow? If that's the case, you'll fulfill your wish so we can go back and report our mission. When the officer said this, he kicked Mother Chow. Hurry up. Well, treat it as if you're dead if you don't leave. No, no. Let's go, I'm okay. Mother Chow hurriedly got up. Seeing this, Chow Lon Lon could only support her mother and continue forward, while the others didn't say anything else. What a bunch of ingrates, said the officer. Never honest if they don't get whipped once or twice. Chow Lon Lon gritted her teeth. He better not let her get an opportunity, or she would definitely kill him. She just didn't know if her big brother had managed to escape the arrest of the soldiers. If he did, why wasn't he here to save them? Mother Chow fell to the ground and dragged her along just as she was thinking. Her entire body hurt from the fall, and she was whipped before she could make a sound. The tail of the whip hit her head, and her view darkened. She heard another gust of wind. Just as she was about to dodge, a body pressed down on her, and a storm of kicks came. Then, her mother spat a mouthful of blood on her face, which made her scream. Perhaps because her screams were too heartbreaking, the officers finally stopped. Cough. Mother Chow coughed violently, then her head tilted to the side as she vomited large mouthfuls of blood, shocking everyone. When Chow Lon Lon realized something was wrong, she quickly pushed Mother Chow off her and pulled her into her arms. Mother, don't scare me. Lon Lon, live well and wait for your brother. In the future, remember. Mother Chow spoke intermittently, and she didn't finish her sentence. She choked on the cold wind, coughed violently, and spat out more mouthfuls of blood. After that, she raised her hand and touched Chow Lon Lon's face reluctantly. However, before Mother Chow's hand could touch her face, it drooped down, and then her head tilted to the side. She stopped breathing. Chow Lon Lon immediately froze. The officer went forward to check Mother Chow's nose because the situation wasn't good. After realizing she was no longer breathing, he had to call his companions and pull her up. What are you doing? Let go of my mother. You murderers. Let go of my mother. Chow Lon Lon roared in anger. However, the officers ignored her and even whipped her twice. They hastily dug a snow pit and buried her in it. Chow Yuan, who was not far away, had looked at Chow Lon Lon with hatred, indifference, and even ridicule. She wouldn't have brought them such disaster if it weren't for her shamelessness. Chapter 155 Escape. Now that she had caused her mother's death, he felt some sympathy for her. However, it wasn't that he sympathized with her, but rather if she would regret her previous betrayal. Would she regret doing it because of Gu Shengru's charm despite knowing they couldn't be together and eventually harming others? Did she regret it? Of course, Chow Lon Lon regretted it long ago, but she didn't know Gu Qingrui had saved Zhou Huaiming, so she never felt that she had done anything wrong. However, after seeing what happened to her mother and having her mother die in her arms, she finally knew what she did wrong. Just like her father had said, they were enemies. Even if Gu Qingrui knew Zhou Huaiming would harm the Chow family after he recovered, he wouldn't have said anything. At this thought, a glint of hatred flashed in her eyes. The officer didn't know what she was thinking, so when he saw her eyes full of hatred, he thought she was targeting him. He went up and gave her a whip. Let's go quickly. We can only be safe if we get out of the snow zone as soon as possible. After that, he muttered a few words to the others, and they became wary of Chow Lon Lon. If she did anything aggressive, she would be beaten up immediately. 3 days passed just like that. On the night of the third day, an officer quietly called Xiao Lanlan out. At first, Xiao Lanlan didn't want to go. She was afraid they would do something to her, but these few days, she had been beaten constantly, so, in the end, she obediently followed. After walking to some ruins not far away, the officer said, "Go. Someone wants to see you." Xiao Lanlan was stunned for a moment. She thought of her brother and immediately walked out. Under the light of the snow, she could vaguely see that it was a man who wasn't very tall. There was a person at his feet, or rather, a corpse. She realized something and quickly said, "Mister, are you here to pick me up?" "Yes, I heard that your mother is gone," the man said in a deep voice. "Yes, it was 3 days ago." Xiao Lanlan said indignantly, "Why did you only come now? My mother would still be alive. We can only save one. So, isn't that great? Or do you prefer that I make a choice?" The man said in a bad mood. "Scream a few times, the more painful sounding, the better," said the man. After saying that, he started to howl like a wolf. At first, Xiao Lanlan's face turned pale, but she quickly understood what he meant and started to scream. When the officer from before came over, he asked Xiao Lanlan to change her clothes quickly. She tore the clothes apart and threw them near the corpse. Then, Xiao Lanlan realized that the corpse had been bitten to the point that it no longer looked human. There was a wolf's corpse on the side, and she was so scared that she couldn't help but tremble. "Let's go, or do you really want to be eaten by wolves?" The man stepped forward to grab her, then immediately turned around and left. The officer also pretended to shout to attract others' attention to her miserable state. Then he left in a hurry. Soon, another wolf arrived and tore the corpse into pieces, which were already beyond recognition. In the county office, Heartwarming handed over the information about the 1,000 troops stationed here to County Mayor Kong and said a few words. "I'll leave the rest to you, Mr. Kong. I'll be returning to the camp tomorrow. Are you in a hurry? If not, why not leave a day later? Tomorrow, let's go for another meal of hot pot," County Mayor Kong suggested. Heartwarming hesitated for a moment. "Sure, let's go then. I'll bring some back if it's convenient for my cousin. I'll treat you this time." "No need, I'll pay. You just have to remember to take care of the couple in the future, as long as they don't break the law." Chapter 156 Farewell. 1. No problem. County Mayor Kong paused and asked some more. "By the way, are you really going to keep Constable Li and Xiao Lanping alive? I heard they're planning to bring Xiao Lanlan and her mother back." "Yes, because I discovered that an underground force is helping them. They can be used to lure those people out. Well, wait for all the underground forces here to gather before we capture them all in one fell swoop. Otherwise, once they've settled down and grown, they'll cause us more trouble." "I understand. Okay, I'll leave you to your work. I have to go back and pack up as I'll leave town tomorrow." Heartwarming turned around and walked out. After he left, County Mayor Kong read the garrison situation and shook his head. No wonder the previous governor acted like a king. How much did he spend bribing these people? On the other end, Gu Qingrui returned and saw the seafood feast on the table when he entered the interspace. He was drooling, especially after noticing the steamed abalone with garlic vermicelli and lobster. "Look at you," Showing scolded with a smile. "Hurry up and wash your hands. I've been here for 2 months and haven't had any seafood other than crab. I'm craving this so badly." When Gu Qingrui said this, he saw a bottle of normal liquor on the table and paused. "Babe, let's have the bottle of white wine, and that would be perfect to go with the seafood." "No problem. Let's have a feast then." Zhou Ying said as she put the alcohol aside and went to the warehouse to open a bottle of high-end white wine. After they had their fill, Gu Qingrui told Zhou Ying about his visit to the Gu family. We don't have to give them anything more next time. Mrs. Liu is just insatiable, and the shamelessness of her attitude is unbearable. True. Since they don't like it, don't even think about asking for more in the future. Zhou Ying nodded in agreement. After that, the couple got up and went to do their things. The next day, as soon as Zhou Ying arrived at the restaurant, she saw Sun Hongliang entertaining Zhou Huaiming and County Mayor Kong. She paused for a moment before walking over and asking, Brother Zhou, Mr. Kong, why are you here this early? I'm returning to the military camp today, so I came to say goodbye and have a hot pot while I'm at it. By the way, can I take this pot with me? Zhou Huaiming asked. I also want to take away 2 sets of ingredients. Of course. I'll prepare the base ingredients for you, and you can buy the meat yourself. Zhou Ying replied. I'll have to trouble Manager Zhou to prepare 2 sets for me too. County Mayor Kong requested. No problem. I'll go and prepare now while you guys chat. Zhou Ying later asked a worker to go to the clinic and call Gu Qingrui back. Meanwhile, she went to the kitchen and started to pack the base and dipping sauce for them in a can. After she was done, she wrote down the instructions and dosage. The rest was made into a hot pot and served to them. Zhou Huaiming saw her coming over and pointed to the seat next to Gu Qingrui. Since the restaurant isn't busy right now, let your workers prepare the rest, and we should have a meal together. Sure, why not? This meal is our farewell party for Brother Zhou. I wish you a safe journey. Zhou Ying said as she sat beside Gu Qingrui. You make it sound like I'm trying to escape from this meal. Zhou Huaiming was stunned for a moment. No, isn't this what we should do? If you come back, remember to come and find us. Gu Qingrui quickly said. He placed half a plate of mutton into the pot and continued, this lamb meat is tender and will be cooked as soon as it curls up. Help yourself. Chapter 157 Farewell, 2, Of course, I know about that. Zhou Huaiming said as he picked up a piece of meat. To be honest, Zhou Ying's cooking skills are so good that I'm sure I'll be craving it in less than a month. It's good that you like it. It's cold, so why not I make some food now and then have Manager Liu bring it over? Zhou Huaiming nodded. No problem. But you have to make more, sister. Otherwise, there won't be enough for everyone. Of course. When they were almost done eating, she left and returned to the kitchen to wrap up the hot pot ingredients for them. Thinking of Zhou Huaiming's previous words, she picked up a food basket for him. There were all sorts of snacks, like veggie rolls and crunchy peanuts. She also packed more than 10 meat biscuits in oil paper so that he could eat them after heating them on the way. After preparing, she placed the items on the counter and said to Sun Hongliang, Mr. Zhou and the others don't need to pay for this meal today, and it's on me. Understood. Are these the same? Sun Hongliang pointed at the things she had packed. This is a personal gift, you don't have to write it down in the account books. Zhou Ying spoke as Gu Qingrui brought them down. Zhou Ying handed the things to them and reminded them, be careful, I put them in a clay pot. Thank you, sister. How much is it? Zhou Huaiming took it and asked. No need. I already said that today's meal is on us. Zhou Ying shook her head. Brother Zhou, let's go while the weather is still clear. Gu Qingrui walked out with them after that. Seeing this, Zhou Huaiming and County Mayor Kong didn't mention paying again. After a few polite goodbyes, they went their separate ways. However, Zhou Huaiming didn't leave immediately. Instead, he went to talk to Manager Liu before he took his carriage to the military camp. On the other end, Gu Qingrui followed Zhouing back to the kitchen after their guests had left. He turned his head and said to her, "Brother Zhou just told me that elder Qiao's son, Qiao Lanqing, hasn't been captured. Qiao Lanlan might have also been rescued, so we should be careful." "Why didn't they arrest her?" Zhouing was shocked. She thought the danger was over, but it seemed it was still around. She thought of something and asked, could he be fishing for a bigger fish? Most likely. This town is a transit station for the waterway, so it's an important strategic place. It wouldn't be peaceful soon. Gu Qingrui added. Keep an eye on the 2 workers from the old Dongxin restaurant in case they're used by someone else. I'm going to the clinic. Sure, come home early tonight if there's nothing much there. After finishing her work in the afternoon, she went to the manor and taught them how to make tofu, its byproducts, and starch noodles. She only left after she guided them to make the finished products. Suddenly, Chang Shun chased after her. "Mistress, I saw that the starch noodles are made from green bean starch. Taro might also be a possible replacement, so can we change it?" "It's a good idea, but green bean noodles are the most suitable and delicious when cooked." When Zhouing said this, she thought of the taro noodles, and it should be fine if the taro noodles were used for shabu shabu. Try it and see if you can make it. You must at least guarantee that it doesn't break down after being boiled in water constantly. I understand. Let me try it, as we have quite a lot of taro in our village. If you succeed, remember to tell me. Zhouing reminded him, took Air Zhuang, and went home. In the evening, after dinner was ready, Zhouing waited until the food was cold, but Gu Qingrui still didn't return home. Thinking of him as a doctor, she did not wait any longer. Instead, she left half for him and started eating. After that, she went to her interspace to wash her dirty clothes, especially the blankets she had changed out of, and dried them in the washing machine before hanging them in the villa. Chapter 158 New Year's Gift 1. She didn't expect that he still had yet to return when she finished her work. She was a little anxious, but she felt more at ease when she thought of his abilities. She would have to get an accurate answer from him in the future regarding when he would return. Otherwise, it wasn't pleasant for her to keep waiting like this. She waited for another hour, but he still didn't return. She locked the door and left with Air Zhuang. They had not walked far from the village when Air Zhuang broke free from her grasp and pounced on someone. Soon, Gu Shengrui's laughter could be heard. She heaved a sigh of relief and waited in place. When Gu Qingrui came over, Zhouing smelled the faint smell of blood on him and asked worriedly, "Rui, you're injured?" "I'm fine, as it's not my blood." A seriously injured person came in the evening, and I stabilized him before rushing back. "I'm sorry for making you worried. It's good that you're fine. I was just afraid that Qiao Lanqing was causing you trouble." "Don't worry, if he's smart, he won't, at least not when the situation is unclear. I'm guessing he'll only make a move after he knows most of General Zhou's men and where they're stationed." Gu Qingrui added, "By the way, today is the 15th day of the 12th lunar month, and I saw many on the streets preparing New Year's goods. Shouldn't we also prepare New Year's items and gifts for each family?" New Year's gift. Oh, right, but not only for the villagers but also for Manager Liu, Dr. Luo, County Mayor Kong, and more. Since we are acquaintances, we should at least show our appreciation for the new year. Zhouing nodded in agreement. If he had not mentioned it, she would have forgotten about it. After returning home, Zhouing heated dinner for him, then took out a pen and paper and wrote down a list of gifts. It was easy to prepare the villagers' gifts. They would bring some rice, noodles, meat, and more wine during the new year, which should be fine. The problematic parts were County Mayor Kong and some others. If they gave too much, it would seem that they were currying favor, and it would be ugly if they gave less. When Gu Qingrui returned, he saw her spinning her pen in a daze. He tapped her head and asked, "What are you thinking about?" "New Year's gift, what do you think should be given to County Mayor Kong and the others?" Zhou Ying raised her head and asked. Gu Qingrui looked at her pouting red lips and leaned in to kiss her. "Wine and tea are a must, adding some dried fruits and meat will do. This way, it won't look like bribery, and it won't look shabby." "Fruits? Are they for sale in town now?" "Yes, they're prepared for the new year. There are mandarins, oranges, apples, and pears, and I didn't see anything else." "Is it very different from the one in our interspace?" "Huge difference. The ones in the interspace are too big and too fresh, so we can't use them. But if it's not fruit, it should be fine. Then let's buy some tomorrow and send it out as soon as possible so that you won't keep thinking about it." "All right, leave this to me." Gu Qingrui patted his chest and said. After that, the two of them entered the interspace. Gu Qingrui immediately went to work while Zhou Ying took out 2 pots. One was filled with pig trotters, and the other had only 3 pork trotters. She took out a large pressure cooker and started making beef sauce. After she was done, she went to the factory area and used the blender to make 3 pots of meatballs. 1 pot of fish meatballs, 1 pot of beef meatballs, and the last pot being pork meatballs. She then proceeded to freeze them. She found homemade cured meat, sausages, chicken, and fish in a warehouse. After that, she prepared a bag of the dried fruits she got from the Chow family, such as golden jujubes, longans, lotus seeds, raisins, walnuts, and so on. Finally, she added a bag of pine nuts and hazelnuts. After ensuring everything was ready, she hung the fruits outside and packed the rest. Chapter 159 New Year's Gift 2. When Gu Qingrui returned, only the smell of meat was left. He couldn't help but ask, "Babe, did you make more braised pig trotters?" "Your nose is almost as sharp as Zhuang's." Zhou Ying laughed. "Yes, it's braised pork trotters, and I made a pot of them. I put them outside, so if you want to eat, you can when we go out later." "A New Year's gift for Brother Zhou." "That's right. He's our patron now, so since he loves good food, we will satisfy him on that front." "You're right. Do you think we should roast 2 ducks and send them over too?" "The roast duck I made isn't authentic enough. It's just a change of taste. It's not quite the same, but it's more than enough to compete with." "Oh right, roast 1 more, and we'll eat it tomorrow night." After Zhou Ying heard this, she turned and looked over teasingly. Why did it sound like he asked because he wanted to eat it? "I'm going out to slaughter the ducks." Gu Shengrui's face turned red, and he immediately ran away. Seeing this, Zhou Ying didn't say anything more. It wasn't late yet, so she yeasted 500 pounds of white flour and made some bread and buns. After that, she prepared the necessary seasonings for the roast duck. The most important was the jujube wood, the crucial ingredient in the roast duck. Although other wood could be used, it would lack the fruity smoke flavor. When Gu Qingrui brought the ducks over, he had already used a small stick to prop up the duck's cavity. After washing the duck's belly with boiling water, he seared the skin, added sugar, and hung it up to dry the skin. It would take a long time, so they cleaned up a little while waiting. When the steamed buns were cooked, they put them into a warehouse and went out of the interspace to sleep. After waking up, Zhou Ying went back into her interspace to plug the ducks and put them on the grill to roast slowly. She took the duck down when the fat was rendered. She kept the one with slightly broken skin in the storeroom to keep it warm and took the other 2 out of the interspace. Coincidentally, Gu Qingrui had also finished preparing breakfast. After the 2 of them finished eating, Gu Qingrui set aside a pair of pig trotters. After all, giving a gift as a pair was better. They wrapped the rest of the things in oil paper and placed them in 2 tubs. They later used Tian Jiawang's cart to send the stuff to Manager Liu. Uncle Liu, please help us give these to General Zhou. It's a New Year's gift from us. Oh, why didn't you guys give it to him personally yesterday? He left in a hurry, and we didn't manage to make it in time. That's true. Leave it to me then. Thank you. It's full of food, so it would be to hurry up the delivery. Sure. Do you have any extra vermicelli on your side? General Zhou said it was a pity that he forgot to get some from you yesterday. Yes, of course. Please wait a moment, and we'll return to get it now. Zhou Ying said so and left Hongyun restaurant with Gu Qingrui. However, Gu Qingrui went to his clinic, while Zhou Ying and Tian Jiawang returned to her restaurant. Zhou Ying went to the kitchen and used that as a disguise to take out 5 pounds of vermicelli from her interspace. After hesitating, she took another 5 pounds of spicy dried tofu and 2 jars of the restaurant's most expensive green bamboo shoots. She also wrote down the recipe and eating method for the roast duck and sent them back to Hongyun restaurant. After leaving Hongyun restaurant, she wasn't in a hurry to return. Instead, she strolled around the streets and realized that there were many hawker stalls along the streets. Not only were fruits around, but there were also stalls selling beef and mutton. Although the quantity was small, there were many people around. There were all sorts of dried fruits, various desserts, and snacks. There were also frozen fish, mainly small yellow croakers and pomfrets. She also didn't expect to see second Uncle Gu and Gu Qingxi setting up a stall on the street to sell snacks. Chapter 160 New Year's Gift 3. They mainly sold the recipes she provided, along with some date cakes and yellow rice cakes. If she guessed correctly, they should also be millet cakes. Of course, there were also expensive desserts, but a cloth covered them. She had wanted to walk past them, but after seeing second Uncle Gu looking over, she had no choice but to walk over. Second Uncle, how's business? It's alright, much better than a few days ago. How come you have time to go shopping? It's almost the new year, so I came out to buy some New Year's gifts. Oh, right. It's already the 16th, and it's time to prepare for that. You haven't tried your Aunt Lu and second aunt's cooking, have you? Second Uncle Gu asked. I'll give you some. Oh, it's alright. You should keep it and sell it for money. Zhou Ying quickly stopped him. Finally, she pointed at the yellow cake. This cake looks too plain. You can try adding some raisins, dried dates, or red beans on top or in the middle. That's true. I'll bring it up to them later. Second Uncle Gu nodded in agreement. Alright, you guys continue. When Zhou Ying said this, she looked at Gu Qingxi, who was curled up in the cold. Qingxi, if you're cold, get up and move around. It will get colder sitting there. I know, third sister-in-law. Gu Qingxi raised his head and said. Zhou Ying was stunned when she saw the cold sores on his face, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she ordered some dried fruits, small yellow croakers, and other fish. After making the reservation, she returned to her restaurant and got busy. In the afternoon, the dried fruits, frozen fish, and fresh fruits Gu Qingrui ordered arrived. Zhou Ying asked for them to be placed in the warehouse. In the evening, Zhou Ying didn't tell De Hua to go back. Instead, she asked her to go with Jiu Nyang and Chun Nyang to make as many desserts as possible so that she could gift them. The next day, after the gifts were prepared, she gave them to Sun Hongliang and Gu Qingrui. The men sent the gifts in the name of Grassland Taste Restaurant. Meanwhile, she carried 2 pounds each of desserts, dried fruits, beef, and mutton to send to the neighboring shops with good relations. Of course, there were many returned gifts 3 days later. The shops nearby gave away their own goods, plus some dried fruits. As for the county mayor and the others, they returned with many gifts too. The county mayor gave a complete set of expensive stationery, 2 batches of silk cloth, 2 boxes of the most expensive desserts in the county, and a set of gold jewelry. The others were primarily rolls of cloth and different fruits. Some gave sets of silver jewelry, and some gave makeup. Dr. Luo was the most pragmatic of all. He gave Gu Qingrui a set of silver needles, 2 boxes of snake oil ointment for hand protection, and a pair of gold bracelets. In the end, it was Manager Lu who gave the most. A large bag of each of the following: dried fruit, fresh fruit, cured meat, and dried meat. 2 jars of wine, 8 pieces of high-quality cloth in different colors, 2 sets of stationery, 2 high-quality stamps, a collection of gold jewelry, and a set of white jade jewelry. Zhou Ying was speechless after receiving these. This was an exorbitant amount of gifts, and she felt rich just by receiving them. Sun Hongliang laughed at her shocked expression. Don't be surprised, as it's just a small gift from them. Their business has been doing very well since they launched their braised meat products. Moreover, there are more than 30 Hongyun restaurants in the entire country. So, who's the one getting rich here? That's because of their abilities. But since you've said so, I'll accept it with peace of mind. Zhou Ying said with a smile. After that, Manager Lu personally came in a horse carriage and said, Ms. Zhou, come here quickly. General Zhou's return gift has arrived. You split the gifts into 2 waves. Zhou Ying smiled and greeted him. Chapter 161 New Year's Gift 4, of course. One of them represents Hongyun Restaurant, and the other is General Zhou's personal gift. Manager Lu said with a smile. After that, he had people carry all the gifts into the backyard and said, Oh right, General Zhou requested that I ask you for more hot pot ingredients. There wasn't enough on his side, and they almost fought. It's a little late today. How about tomorrow? I'll send it to you tomorrow morning. That's fine. Oh, right, this is the list of gifts. Keep it well. Manager Lu said as he gave her the list of gifts and left with his men. Zhou Ying looked at the gift list and found it mainly seafood. They were mostly of the more precious big yellow croaker and sea bass. There were also 8 batches of silk, brocade, and other high-quality silks. Other than cloth, there were 4 ornaments, 4 small and 4 big vases, and some more jewelry. What puzzled her was that there were also a pair of daggers at the end. What was the meaning of this? Did he put these there to remind them that there was danger? After thinking it through, she went forward to take a look. The seafood was still frozen because of the cold weather, and she just glanced at the rest quickly. Finally, she found the box where the dagger was kept. After opening it, she saw 2 daggers covered with a leather case. She casually picked up one dagger and pulled it out. Suddenly, a cold silver light flashed, almost blinding her eyes. After getting used to it, she looked at it carefully. The appearance was ordinary, but it was not difficult to guess that this pair of daggers was precious based on the cold glint that flashed. They were probably the most expensive of all the gifts General Zhou had sent over. She kept some seafood and put it in the warehouse for the restaurant staff to eat for the new year, while the rest were all kept in her room. When Qian Zhuang came over, they loaded all the valuable things, as well as the gifts prepared for the villagers, onto the cart and brought them home. After returning home, Zhou Ying put all the valuable things, including all kinds of materials, into her interspace. She then began to prepare gifts for the elders in the village. They preferred dried fruits, snacks, and meat. For the meat, she prepared 2 pounds of beef, mutton, and fish for each family. What was left were the patriarch and the village chief. She added silk clothes and an extra big yellow croaker for them. In the end, she prepared 2 batches of ordinary satin for the Gu family. She threw in a set of dark gray satin with flowers and another batch of the oldest dark green satin. Of course, these were worn mainly by men. After hesitating, she threw in a huge piece of pig's hind. Gu Qingrui laughed when he saw this. Are you trying to avoid giving anything to Mrs. Liu and the others? If they don't mind, they can wear it too, right? Maybe they can wear it in a few years. Shouing said it in a weird tone. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that she had given some expensive cloths to the patriarch and the village chief, she wouldn't have given the Gu family anything. Since she had to give some, it wasn't appropriate to purposely not provide anything to Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao entirely, so she gave what she saw fit. You're so polite. Are you coming with me or do I go by myself? You can send these to the 4 elders of the clan by yourself. I'll go with you to the village chief's place, the patriarch's place, and our old house. Alright, I'll go by myself first, then. Well, go to the 3 houses after dinner, so you go on ahead to start cooking. Gu Qingrui suggested and went out with the gifts. Shouing turned around and went to start cooking. After dinner, the couple put their stuff in the inner space and went out. The first place they went to was the village chief's house. When they arrived, the whole family was still having dinner, so they politely said a few words and put down the gifts before heading their way. Next, they went to the patriarch's house. The family had already finished their meal, and only the patriarch and Mrs. Wang were chatting in the living room. After the couple entered, Gu Qingrui immediately went up to them and greeted, "Uncle, I am here to wish you a happy new year in advance." Chapter 162 New Year's Gift 5. Come. Have a seat while I make some tea. The patriarch looked at the things they were carrying and smiled happily. Of course, he wasn't happy just because of their expensive gifts, and it was just that this was their first time visiting him for the new year. After noticing the expensive gifts, it showed him that they respected him a lot. "Oh, you guys, take a seat." Mrs. Wang stood up and greeted them with a smile. "Auntie, you should take the food now, especially the meat. It might spoil if you wait any further." Zhouing told her as she placed the clothes on the brick bed, giving her the rest. Sure. Just have a seat, and I'll be right back." Mrs. Wang took the things and went out of the living room. She quickly brought in a pot of tea and poured them a cup. After that, they greeted the couple politely, and the patriarch asked them about their lives or if they needed any help. The 2 of them answered that all was well. When they finished their tea and were about to leave, the patriarch smiled and said, "Hing, your restaurant sells beef and mutton daily. On the 30th of the month, can you spare a cow's head to pay respects to our ancestors? I'll pay you at the market price. I've been to the meat market for the past 2 days, and it was quite in demand and hard to get. Only the head." Zhouing shook her head after asking. "You don't need to pay," and well, before she could finish, the patriarch interrupted, "As long as it's a cow's head, it's fine. I must pay for this as this is an important matter for the clan, and it's not about favors." "Alright then, well, take a break on the 28th, I'll send it to you by the 29th at the latest." "Okay, thank you. Otherwise, it would have been hard to get a hold of this. You two have a good night. We still have to make a trip over there. Go on, and have a good talk there. Let me know if they don't know what's good for them and make unreasonable requests. I'll deal with them." Zhouing smiled but didn't reply. Instead, she walked out with Gu Qingrui. By the time they arrived at the Gu residence, they had finished their meal. Only Father Gu and Madame Chiao were left in the living room chatting. The couple put down their gifts and said, "Grandma, Dad, I wish you two a happy new year in advance." Madame Chiao immediately got up. Good, it's good that you're here. Quickly sit down so I can chat with you too." Father Gu stood up and made way for them when he saw this. He went outside and asked Mrs. Gua to prepare tea for them. Soon, everyone knew the couple was here to deliver New Year's gifts, and they all ran in one by one. They were all people who had seen all the luxury the world had to offer. If it were in the past, no one would be interested in such small gifts, but they were more than satisfied now. Especially the children, who were used to luxury. Therefore, all of them greeted the couple with smiles. Only Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Yao saw through their intentions. Even if they gave them the gifts, it wasn't something the two ladies could use, and their faces darkened. But before they could open their mouths, Madame Chiao warned them with her eyes. Don't they know what they've done before? It was already kind of them to bring so many gifts, especially cloth. What else could they be dissatisfied with? Thus, the entire room was quiet except for Madame Chiao's. She was asking how they had been these days. Naturally, Gu Qingrui didn't play it down. He emphasized the past when he lived on the mountain, and everyone was embarrassed to say anything. Even Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Yao's heads drooped. After seeing that it was effective, Gu Qingrui added, "But don't worry, Grandma. We're doing fine now." At the same time, this experience also made us understand the meaning of only through suffering can one rise above others. Only after suffering will you know how to cherish your current life, and only after suffering will you be able to move forward step by step. Chapter 163 New Year's Gift, 6, Well said. Only those who have suffered will know what is sweet. Madame Chiao nodded in agreement. She then looked at Zhou Ying. I'm sorry that you've suffered in this family. Thank you for bringing Qingrui along and supporting your little family. That's right. Madame Chiao had always thought that a young master who had never suffered wouldn't be enlightened that quickly. She could still see that her two sons hadn't completely let go of their luxurious past. Only Zhou Ying, who had grown up at the bottom of society, could survive tenaciously and influence Gu Qingrui simultaneously. This was also why Madame Chiao suddenly asked Mrs. Lu to find a farmer's girl for Gu Qingye. Unfortunately, she didn't understand that a small family couldn't live without a reliable and capable man to take care of it too. Thank you for the praise, Grandma. We husband and wife are one, so it's necessary to support each other. Zhou Ying replied with a smile. Yes, yes. Husband and wife are supposed to be one. Since you've both thought it through, you should be able to live your life well in the future. Madame Chiao nodded in agreement. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, the couple left. After seeing them out, Father Gu said, "Both of you are newly married this year, and it's Zhou Ying's first year in the family. So, you two can come here on the 30th to spend the new year together." Gu Qingrui and Zhou Ying looked at each other and replied, "All right, we'll be here on time." No matter what their purpose was, they couldn't refuse him. After all, it was a custom here to spend the night together on the 30th. In addition, the whole village would have a big New Year's greeting on the morning of the first day of the new year. If they didn't go, Mrs. Lu and the others would spread the news, and the good image they had crafted would drop. Of course, if they dared to find trouble, then don't blame them for falling out. After the two returned home, they snuffed the fire and entered the interspace. Zhou Ying used a frying machine to stir-fry 2 pots of hot pot seasoning, cut them into small pieces, and mix a large jar of dipping sauce. Finally, she prepared 50 kilograms of vermicelli and 50 kilograms of spicy beef jerky. This should be enough for Brother Zhou. After they were done, Zhou Ying remembered the dagger. When Gu Qingrui returned, she handed him a dagger and said, "This is from Brother Zhou, and we can keep one for each of us for self-defense." Gu Qingrui opened it and took a look. "This is really good stuff, and it's as good as a specially made scalpel. But you should take it, I'm better off using my scalpel." "That's fine too, so let's just leave it here. I also think that using a boning knife is easier for my daily tasks." Also, you're making us sound like executioners, Shoing said with a smile. But when it's time to act, don't hesitate. Otherwise, we'll be the ones to lose our lives. Gu Qingrui continued, it seems that when we butcher pigs, cows, and sheep in the future, we should slaughter them alive. This way, we can practice. Remember, no matter if it's a human or an animal, no matter where you attack from, you have to tilt it at about 45 degrees and stab it in the heart. Only then can you kill it in one stroke. Shoing nodded. I hope I don't need to use this advice in my life. Gu Qingrui didn't force her. After all, she had her inner space and many ways to defend herself. The next day, under manager Liu's astonished gaze, Shoing put down the goods and returned to her restaurant. After Qian Zhuang and the others returned in the evening, Shoing said, tomorrow, you don't have to go collect vegetables for the next 2 days. Go to other towns or counties and sell the cow and sheep heads in our ice cellar. She thought of this after leaving the patriarch's house yesterday. The cow and sheep heads at the end of the year were much more expensive than usual, especially the sheep, and it would bring them a great profit if sold individually. Chapter 164 New Year's Gift, 7, Cow and Sheep Heads. After Qian Zhuang heard this, he and Gu Erjiang looked at each other and immediately understood what she meant. They nodded and continued, sure, we'll sell the cow and sheep heads in stock. By the way, you two can also keep an eye on the market price of the beef and mutton intestines. If the price is right, sell the ones we have lying around. As for the matter regarding money or taking them from the warehouse, you can look for Manager Sunday. No problem, leave it to us. Qian Zhuang patted his chest and stated. Shoing did not expect these to be sold out so quickly in 2 days, especially the cow heads. Shoing even had to instruct Sun Hongliang to leave one for her especially. In the blink of an eye, it was the 28th day of the month. Shoing gave Sun Hongliang, Tian Zhouang, De Hua, and the 2 waiters who didn't stay in the restaurant 5 pounds of beef, the same amount of lamb, a big yellow croaker, a base, and 2 pounds of snacks and dried fruits each. After that, Shoing calculated that they had made a net profit of 6,668 taels of silver in a month. Thus, she announced, everyone, wait a moment. You've all worked hard this month, and it's also the new year. Since the restaurant covers your meals, I won't bother giving you all more food. It'll give you an extra month's salary as a bonus. Everyone, please use this to buy some New Year goods or new clothes. Thank you, mistress. Thank you so much. Sun Hongliang smiled and bowed. The others immediately echoed this gratitude. Shoing smiled. I also wish everyone good health in the new year and a happy life. After that, she gave each of them an extra month's salary. When less than 200 copper coins were left, Shoing took some extra copper from her purse and put it in a red packet. She handed 100 copper coins each to Li Yu and De Hua. This is the New Year's money for the 2 of you. Keep it and buy some candy to enjoy the new year. Thank you, mistress. I wish you great fortune in the next year. Li Yu took it with a smile. Haha, this blessing is common, but I like it very much. The crowd burst into laughter. Thank you, Auntie Gu, De Hua said, blushing. I wish you will get prettier as each year passes. Shoing was stunned for a moment, as she didn't expect her to say words of blessing. Auntie Gu loves this blessing, too, she said, going up and ruffling her hair. I also wish my De Hua would grow up to be a beautiful lady. Tian Zhouang also laughed when he saw this. His sister was right to send her here, as she finally learned to integrate into her surrounding environment. When Gu Qingrui reached the restaurant at night, they didn't go home. Everyone had a happy early New Year's Eve gathering dinner. Zhou Ying entrusted the restaurant to Zhao Qing and Li Xing the following day. Once that was done, she, Qian Zhuang, and Gu Erjiang delivered the gifts she had prepared to the manor's long-term workers. The gifts for them were different from the others. She prepared 10 pounds of white flour and polished rice, 2 pounds of dried fruits, sugar cubes, desserts, and added 2 pounds of fish for each worker. However, the one prepared for Uncle Nian was different. He had 2 pounds of dried fruits and snacks, a big pork joint, 2 braised fish, a roasted chicken, 2 pounds of 5-spice and spicy dried tofu, and finally, 100 frozen dumplings that were especially left for him yesterday. With these things, he could have a scrumptious new year. After arriving in the village, Zhou Ying ordered some villagers to slaughter 2 more sheep and distribute the meat to everyone. However, she kept the bones and gave the lamb intestines to Uncle Nian because she heard that the old man was good at making a feast out of them. All the workers were naturally delighted after receiving the gifts, and they finally acknowledged Zhou Ying as their mistress. This was because Elder Qiao never once prepared New Year's gifts for them. At most, he would order a sheep to be slaughtered for everyone to eat when he was happy. Chapter 165 New Year 1. Amidst a warm farewell, Zhou Ying and the other 2 left the village. Of course, Qian Zhuang and Gu Hanjiang also had their New Year's gifts, just like Tian Zhuang and the others. There was still the cow's head left. After arriving at the village, Zhou Ying gave the cow's head to the patriarch and got a tael of silver as payment. She had also accepted another job. The patriarch had asked her to prepare 6 types of fried offerings for tomorrow. In the afternoon, Zhou Ying cleaned the house from inside to outside, and Gu Qingrui rushed back with Er Zhuang when she was almost done. "Why are you back so early?" Zhou Ying asked in surprise. "It'll be the 30th tomorrow, so we left early." Gu Qingrui explained and handed her a silver note. "This is the bonus from before the new year. Although it's not as much as the restaurant, it's still a decent chuck." Zhou Ying took it and glanced at it. It was a silver note worth 100 taels. She nodded in agreement. "It's quite the sum. By the way, I've been cleaning the whole afternoon so you can cook dinner." "No problem. Let's have noodles and tomato egg soup today." "All right, I'll prepare the ingredients for you." Zhou Ying agreed, and she took out all the ingredients he needed. As soon as she came out of the kitchen, she saw Sister Tian walking in with a basket. "I thought you guys should be back, and I prepared some New Year's goods. I brought some over for you because I assumed you didn't prepare anything. Do try out my cooking." She handed the basket to her and turned to leave. "Thank you, Sister Tian." Zhou Ying quickly thanked her. She carried the basket into the kitchen and opened the cloth to take a look. In the middle was a large bowl of meatballs fried with minced meat and steamed buns. There were also cakes wrapped in straw paper, dumplings, and sesame seed goodies. After putting everything in her interspace, she washed the basket and returned it with a big bowl of fried yellow croaker. After dinner, Zhou Ying and Gu Qingrui chatted for a while, then went to the interspace to cook more. They made a batch of everything fried, such as hemp leaves, small dough sticks, fried peas, and fried pancakes. The next day, Gu Qingrui went to the ancestral hall early in the morning with the fried food. Zhou Ying tidied up the house and put a big bowl of fried small yellow croaker, 1 whole pork shank, and 2 pounds of 5-spice shredded tofu in a basket. This was the dish they would bring to the Gu family's house tonight. When they were almost done, they went to the ancestral hall. It was packed full of people. The men brought their children to pay respects to their ancestors, while the women set up a shed nearby to cook. This left her a little dumbfounded. As an ex-northerner, she had only heard of these lively ancestral worship ceremonies but had never seen them in real life. "Shengru's wife, come and help us. We would love to try your cooking." Sixth Aunt Gu stood in the shed and waved at her. "Oh, hi, I'm coming." Zhou responded and walked over. She found that there was a lot of food inside, and it was no wonder they were busy here, even with so many people. "Oh, you know how to make crispy pork, right? The patriarch always complained that we didn't fry it crispy enough." Sixth Aunt Gu turned her head and asked. "Yes. The key is in the flour if you want the crispy pork to be delicious. The meat has to be marinated thoroughly, and the meat has to be tenderized." Zhou washed her hands and began to get busy. After she marinated the meat, Mrs. Wang quietly walked over and said, "Didn't you bring anything when you came?" Chapter 166 New Year, 2, Bring what? Zhou turned her head and asked in confusion. "Didn't anyone tell you? Please say what you want, as I do not understand what you mean." "You mean," Mrs. Wang didn't know what to say when she saw her confused look. After that, she pulled her aside and asked, "You know that we need to burn paper money to pay respects to our ancestors, right? You've already separated from your main family and are now independent, so you must prepare some paper money for each ancestor. There's also pork and noodles for the offering." Although they were bought with money from the clan, each family would also prepare some more food when they came. Basically, just some simple cooking or offerings. Zhou nodded and said, "The patriarch told us to prepare some fried goods, so we didn't prepare anything else. However, it's probably too late to buy paper money now. How about this? I still have some paper money left at home, so come with me." "No matter what, you need some," said Mrs. Wang. "Sure, I'll let Sixth Aunt know." Zhou agreed, and she went to her. "Sixth Aunt, I'm going out for a while. I'll fry the crispy meat when I come back." After that, the two women hurried out. Zhou quickly cut the paper money while Mrs. Wang helped arrange them. After 15 minutes, they had a stack ready. Mrs. Wang measured the thickness and said, "It should be enough, so remember to give it to Qingrui. He'll have to go to the ancestral hall to burn these. Oh right, incense too. Qingrui will need these too." Mrs. Wang said as she turned around, took out a small incense stick from the cabinet drawer, and handed it to her. "Let's go." "Thank you so much, Auntie," said Zhou after they went out. "Otherwise, we would have made a fool of ourselves today. You can't be blamed for this since no one told you about it. You wouldn't know about this otherwise." Mrs. Wang couldn't help but ridicule Madame Chiao and the others at this time. How could those elders not tell the younger generation about such an important thing? What an irresponsible bunch. She didn't know Madame Chiao and the others had long forgotten this rule. When they were in the capital, they only returned with gifts yearly and had never participated in ancestral worship. Paying respects to their ancestors in the capital was a simplified process. The servants had prepared those during the New Year and festivals, and the masters were there just for formality. So they always assumed it was the same over here as well. Father Gu and second Uncle Gu were stuck in a rut when the two women returned. The patriarch was going around and exchanging the things they needed and asking the other clan members to give them a portion if they had any extra. Just as Gu Qingrui was thinking of asking someone else for some, Zhou walked to his side. "Crazy, right? These are for you. Later on, watch what others do and quickly learn. Don't make a fool of ourselves again." Gu Qingrui saw the items in her hands and almost kissed her on the spot. He took it and exclaimed excitedly, "You really are my savior. All right, I can't be here anymore. I have to go and cook." After Zhou clenched her fist to cheer him on, she turned around and returned to the shed to help with the cooking. The main dishes were crispy meat and stir-fried vegetables, most of which were almost finished. Just as she was about to start cooking, she suddenly heard a series of shouts, followed by a commotion. Since she couldn't enter the ancestral hall, she couldn't be bothered to go over. Instead, she continued her cooking. When it was time to eat, she was dumbfounded again. After cooking all this time, no woman was allowed at the table, and they could only hide in the shed and eat. Also, they could only eat steamed buns with vegetables, which was frustrating to her. This also reminded her of the status of men and women in this society. No wonder Mrs. Lu didn't dare say anything to Father Gu, no matter how arrogant she was. Chapter 167 New Year, 3. After the meal, Showing went out to look for Gu Qingrui after helping to clean up the mess. She didn't expect to be surrounded by so many people. Some were complimenting him, while others were trying to please him, almost treating him like an emperor. Gu Qingrui was trying his best to deal with them, so his eyes lit up brightly when he saw her coming toward him. He immediately stood up and said, "Uncles and brothers, please excuse me. I still have things to do at home, so let's talk another day." After that, he bowed, cupped his hands, and then hurriedly walked to Zhou. The crowd looked at him, immediately laughed, and began teasing the two. However, the couple pretended not to hear them and quickly rushed home. When they arrived home, Zhou looked at him, rubbing his cheeks, and asked curiously, "Really? So happy until your face is stiff from all that smiling?" "It's just a fake smile." Gu Qingrui was speechless. "What happened? Do you know that every household will burn incense? I heard an aunt mention it, but I don't understand the customs. I only found out after the event. Whoever's incense burned the brightest would have a better year." At this time, Zhou remembered the exclamations she had heard while cooking. "So, our incense burned the brightest." "That's right, a bright and strong flame. That's why they've been pestering me, saying that if there's any more way I have to earn money next year, we'll have to bring them along." What an old way of thinking. Zhou shook her head. "But if they come to you again, you can tell them to plant more chilies and vegetables to provide for our restaurant," she added. "That's fine. Otherwise, I'm afraid they wouldn't let us go this easily." Gu Qingrui nodded in agreement. Right now, the chilies they were using mainly came from her interspace. This wasn't a long-term solution, and this matter needed to be dealt with sooner or later. Afterwards, Zhou turned on the fire and cooked for Zhuang. She boiled a pot of water and made a pot of chrysanthemum tea for the two of them, and they rested before carrying the things they had prepared to the Gu manor. Gu Qingxi, waiting at the door, saw them and immediately came forward to greet them. "Qingrui, third sister-in-law, I knew you would be here soon." Then, two little girls ran over and greeted sweetly, "Third brother, third sister-in-law." Zhou regretted that she had forgotten to prepare some snacks, so she had to use the basket as a cover to grab a large number of fruit candies from her inner space and divide them. "Don't eat it all at once, or you'll have a toothache." "Thank you, third sister-in-law." The two girls immediately ran in with a smile after getting the candy. "Third sister-in-law, I'll help you carry the basket," Gu Qingxi said as he took the basket. "No need. I'm going to the kitchen, so I'll need these later." Zhou shook her head. "Let's go in and check how much you've learned." Gu Qingrui put his arm around Gu Qingxi's shoulder and walked in. "Ah, Qingrui, maybe not during the new year." Gu Qingxi immediately wailed. Seeing this, Zhou shook her head and went to the kitchen with her basket. She saw Mrs. Gua and Mrs. Sun busy inside and Gu Ziqiong sitting in front of the stove, quietly stoking the fire. "Aunt Gua, Aunt Sun, Happy New Year, sixth sister," she greeted. Nice, you are here." "Oh, you shouldn't have brought more food. There's really no need," Madame Sun enthusiastically replied. She knew that the couple had been secretly helping her son, Qingxi. Otherwise, Qingxi wouldn't have been able to eat his fill at home. "It's nothing much, just 2 dishes. You guys can arrange it as you see fit." Zhou said as she handed her the basket and told her what to do with it. Is there anything else I can help you all with? She asked. Chapter 168 New Year 4 Not really. You can go inside and chat with them, as just us being here will be enough. Mrs. Guo turned her head and spoke with a smile. Zhou Ying's status was different from before. Mrs. Guo might need to ask her for assistance in the future, so she couldn't order her around like before. Yes, don't worry about it. If there are too many people here, it will hinder our movement anyway. Mrs. Sun quickly echoed. Alright, if you need anything, just call me. Zhou reminded them as she turned around and walked back to the living room. You're here. Come and sit with Grandma. As soon as Madame Chiao saw her come in, she immediately waved her hands. Zhou paused and sat next to Madame Chiao after greeting several other elders. She looked at the dark green top she was wearing and said, Grandma, you look lovely in this color. Really? I do quite like this color, and it's all thanks to you. When Madame Chiao said this, she sized her up and asked, why aren't you wearing any new clothes during the new year? I'm wearing new clothes too. As for my New Year's clothes, I'm planning to wear them tomorrow, which is the actual day of the new year. She explained as she drew her burgundy cloak. That's lovely. You're still young, so you should make more clothes to wear when you have the money. Otherwise, you'll look like a bucket no matter what you wear when you're old and out of shape. You won't look good in them then. I'll do as you advise, then. By the way, you've been married for more than 3 months. Are there any movements in your body? Her question stumped Zhou. She quickly realized what she meant when she saw Madame Chiao's eyes staring at her stomach. There's no hurry. We're still young and want to save up some money, so we'll wait until things have completely stabilized before trying for one, she said, smiling. That's true. You wake up early and sleep late at night daily, so it's not suitable for you to have one now. However, you have to do it while you're still young. It'll be hard for you to have children when you're older. I'll take that to heart, Grandma. Zhou nodded. Mrs. Lu sneered as she ate melon seeds while looking at them happily chatting, especially at Madame Chiao. How could she not know that this old hag disliked the poor and favored the rich? If Madame Chiao had treated Zhou like this back then, their family would be the ones getting wealthy. However, since her son and her husband had repeatedly warned her, she only treated them as background noise and continued eating her melon seeds. When Mrs. Yao saw this, she was happy about Mrs. Liu's loss but also didn't want to offend Zhou again. Thus, she was happy enough to watch the drama between them. Father Gu, second Uncle Gu, and Gu Qingji were all reserved and quiet on the men's side. Only Gu Qingya and Gu Qingxi kept Gu Qingrui company and chatted with him about all kinds of topics, from mathematics to food. Gu Qingxi thought of hot pot and smiled awkwardly. Qingrui, I haven't eaten hot pot before. When are you going to treat me to a meal? Father did say it's delicious. I heard good things, especially about the tripe. I heard it's numbing, spicy, chewy, and that anyone who eats it will want to eat more. Ahem. Second Uncle Gu coughed and quipped, if you want to eat it, just say you want to eat it. Don't drag me into the conversation. Gu Qingxi secretly pouted. He had been taught to be honest, but in the end, the person who taught him didn't do the same, the hypocrisy. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui smirked internally and said, there's no problem if you want to eat a hot pot. How about we have lunch there tomorrow afternoon? Really? Gu Qingxi was overjoyed. Then, as if afraid Gu Qingrui would regret his decision, he quickly turned his head to his father. Father, I'll go to third brother's house for lunch tomorrow. You don't have to wait for me for lunch. Go, but don't cause trouble, understand? Second Uncle Gu said it through gritted teeth. At the same time, he cursed inwardly, this little heartless brat. He isn't even going to suggest bringing his father along with him for such a good opportunity. Chapter 169 New Year 5. Soon, dinner was ready. Zhou got up and helped to set the table. After the meal was served, they were divided into 2 tables, as usual, men and women. After the dishes were served, Madame Qiao instantly recognized the dishes Zhou had brought and then said to Mrs. Yao on the side, "Give me some of each of the 3 dishes Zhou had brought. I want to see if her cooking has improved." "All right, just sit tight." Mrs. Yao stood up and handed her a portion of each dish. Of course, she also gave her and her daughter-in-law a portion. When everyone saw this, they immediately took some too. It was mainly because Mrs. Gua and Mrs. Sun's dishes were ordinary, and everyone had long been tired of eating them. When they saw a more delicious option, they naturally didn't hesitate. Zhou didn't join in the fun but ate the other dishes. Of course, another person did not participate in the snatching. It was the pregnant Mrs. Yang. However, she had a mother-in-law to serve her, making her attitude high and mighty. It was as if she were no different from their previous lives. It was the same for the men's table with Zhou Ying's food finishing the fastest. Zhou Qingye picked up the last bit of yellow croaker and said, "Qingrui is sure blessed. Sister-in-law's dishes are getting better and better." "Yes, it's better than the meal we had at noon." Second Uncle Gu nodded in agreement. To be honest, whether it's delicious or not is mostly due to the seasoning. The seasoning for lunch is simple, but these dishes are made in a restaurant with enough prep. Gu Qingrui said so proudly. How could he not be proud? His wife started cooking when she was 8 years old and could make all kinds of dishes. Maybe some dishes weren't as good as those prepared by professional chefs, as she hadn't obtained authentic recipes, but her skills were definitely at the level of a chef. Everyone was speechless after looking at his smug expression as they remembered his cold attitude towards her before. They hadn't expected that his attitude would take a turn after a few months. If they weren't sure that he hadn't been replaced, they would have thought he was entirely someone else. They didn't know they had found the truth, but this truth was completely buried in the ground. Among them, Gu Qingji was the one with the most mixed feelings. Honestly, he had looked down on the couple before, especially regarding status. He was the son of his father's first wife, and his wife was the daughter of a government official. They were the best in the family. On the other hand, one of them was an illegitimate son who had lost his biological mother, while the other was an illegitimate daughter the family completely ignored. They were born with statues that were worlds apart. But in the end, Gu Qingji had to work hard daily to earn just 20 copper coins to support the family, while his wife stayed home to take care of the baby. As for the other couple, one was a respected doctor, and the other was raking in money. They were thriving and completely different from before. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at his wife, Mrs. Yang. As expected, she still looked aloof from the reality they were in. Gu Qingji thought about the child in her stomach, and he suddenly had a headache. He couldn't afford to have a child with just 20 copper coins daily, and he had to think of a way to start a business. "Qingrui, do you have any plans after the new year?" Father Gu asked. "You mean in that aspect?" "It's the thing that the clan members mentioned about bringing everyone along to do. This can be big or small, but you must handle it well." "Yes, yes. Even if you refuse, you have to be tactful about doing it. Otherwise, you will offend the others." Second Uncle Gu chimed in. Gu Qingji and Gu Qingye, originally unconcerned about their conversation, immediately perked up their ears and listened. "Ing and I have already thought about this." "Oh, how do you guys plan to solve this?" Father Gu asked curiously. At the same time, he was also looking forward to their idea, hoping it would be useful to him. Chapter 170 New Year 6. You've heard of the plant, chili. It's the main ingredient for hot pot. Gu Qingrui asked. I know. It's the red and spicy one. Second Uncle Gu nodded. Yes, we don't produce chili in this area, so it's 30% more expensive to import. So we were going to propose that they plant it, and we'd supply the seeds. There are also various kinds of vegetables we need. If anyone can grow them, the restaurant will buy from them. Gu Qingrui replied. Farming, ha. Second Uncle Gu lost interest when he heard this. Qingrui, do you know about the production quantity of chili? Gu Qingji asked curiously. He couldn't leave for an outstation trip for a year or two because his wife was pregnant. He could try it out if the income from planting chili were good. I'm not sure about the details, but I heard it's more cost-effective than growing normal grains and vegetables, and they don't need particularly fertile land. Gu Qingrui replied vaguely. He only knew that chili in both the interspace and modern times was considered a high-yield crop, but he couldn't be sure since he had never planted it in these ancient times. I've seen them before, and the output should not be low. When it ripens, the plant will be so filled with red chilies that you can't even see its leaves. The main point is that it can be planted in mountains or sand, so I think it's relatively drought-resistant. That sounds good. Second Uncle Gu said. Yup, if it's successful, it'll be much better than planting a single crop. Father Gu nodded. How many seeds do you have? Is it enough for everyone? He asked. Yes. We peeled half of the seeds from the chili we bought earlier to plant them ourselves. Gu Qingrui paused and continued, but I don't suggest destroying the grain crop you have planted. After all, they are something to fill your stomach with, and that's much more important. The problem is that we can't say for sure what the yield will be after planting it, so we recommend using the vegetable garden or some extra land to plant it as a trial. If it's successful, it'll give more seeds next year. You're right. Don't go making empty promises and decisions for others. Father Gu nodded in agreement. He felt gratified and sad at the same time. He was glad that he had matured and was more tactful in his words and actions. He was no longer as stubborn as he used to be. The unfortunate thing was that he was forced to mature, which caused him to lose his good relationship with them. After the meal, they sat down and chatted for a while. When Madame Chiao was tired, the young couple took their baskets and went home. Gu Qingji and his wife returned to their bedroom, and he told Mrs. Yang about planting chili. Darling, I think this is feasible. Let's buy 2 acres of barren land and try it. Barren land. But that means we have to plow it up, right? You do know we don't have any servants now, and I can't do any work. Besides, you're doing a good job in the workshop, how will you have the time for this? If this doesn't work and you lose the workshop job, what will we do in the future? Mrs. Yang said in disagreement. After hearing this, Gu Qingji hesitated momentarily and said, I don't want to do the job at the workshop anymore. It's tiring and only earns me a little. Now that the Chiao family is gone, I want to take a gamble. Otherwise, our lives will be stagnant like this forever. Mrs. Yang fell silent upon hearing this. To be honest, she had had enough of this kind of life where she could neither eat her fill nor starve to death. However, the husband and wife had never suffered before, let alone farming. She hesitated for a moment. I think Uncle and Father will decide on this matter soon. Let's see what the family will do before we decide if we want to go on ourselves. Chapter 171 New Year 7. Alright, let's see what happens then. Gu Qingji nodded. Father Gu and second Uncle Gu, who were on night duty in the main hall, also discussed this. However, their family only had 100 acres of land, and all of it was planted with wheat, so there was no more land to grow chili. In the end, Father Goose said, if we really can't do it, let's see if anyone has land to sell. If not, we can buy some barren land to plant vegetables, as we can't keep buying them with our current income. That's true. Since there's no tax for the next 5 years, we can try it. If this chili thing doesn't work out, we'll turn it into a vegetable garden. Second Uncle Goo nodded in agreement. At that time, Mrs. Yao couldn't bear to listen anymore. The men only thought about how they could earn money by farming, but why didn't they think about whether they knew how to farm or not? At the thought of this, she asked, Brother, darling, you're both thinking about farming. But which one of you knows how to farm? You've never even watered the flowers. Yeah, no matter how high the income from farming is, there's a limit. If we were to hire workers, we might as well not farm. Mrs. Lu echoed. Who would know how to do anything when they were born? You didn't know how to grow bean sprouts before, but you've learned it now. Second Uncle Goo said indignantly. Speaking of bean sprouts, fewer people are selling them now. We can try that out. Father Goo added. That's because there are no more cheap beans. The green beans in the grain shop have grown to 7 coppers per pound now. Mrs. Lu mentioned. 1 pound of beans grows to about 10 pounds of bean sprouts. We won't lose money no matter what, as there will be no more vegetables for sale after the new year. This will be a good opportunity. Father Goo insisted. Let's try it then. We can sell them for at least 1 or 2 months before the vegetables grow. Second Uncle Goo nodded in agreement. You're not buying a boat. Mrs. Yao saw that they were hard-bent on farming and hurriedly asked. You have the silver for that. Second Uncle Goo retorted in a bad mood. Father Goo replied, let's forget about buying a boat for now. Let's see if we can rent one after the river opens. On the other end, Gu Qingrui and Zhouing returned home and gave Er Zhuang a pot of pork ribs to enjoy the new year. The two of them took a bath and changed into new clothes the next morning before going out to make their New Year's visits. The first place they went was their old home. Later, Gu Qingrui and the other 4 brothers went for New Year's greetings. Zhouing went to the patriarch's home with Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Yao. The group went out, and after a round of visits, she felt her knees trembling. She hadn't expected she would have to kowtow in New Year's greetings. If she had known, she would have changed into thick cotton pants. After they visited the entire village, the village women gathered together to gossip. Finally, Ninth Aunt Gu looked at Mrs. Lu and asked, Sister, your son Qingye is turning 18 this year. What kind of girl are you looking for? Do you need our help to find one? Her standards are high, so it's impossible for her to take a liking to your niece. Don't bother asking. At this point, 6th Aunt Gu spoke. What's wrong with my niece? Why can't she make the cut? 9th Aunt Gu looked at her question. Does your niece know how to read? Gu Qingye used to be a scholar, so no matter how low his standards are, he would never find a girl who couldn't read. 6th Aunt Gu responded by turning her head. 9th Aunt Gu was angry after hearing this and wanted to hit her. Mrs. Wang saw this and immediately stepped forward and stopped her. It's the new year, let's not get angry and hurt each other's feelings. After saying that, she glared at 6th Aunt Gu. You too. Why do you have such a foul mouth? His mother hasn't even said anything yet, and here you are answering for her. I stopped her because I was afraid she would embarrass herself. 6th Aunt Gu mumbled, frustrated. You're still talking. Mrs. Wang glared at her. Well, it's getting late. Let's go home and cook for our families. Mrs. Lu said with a dry smile. Chapter 172 New Year, 8 Yes, yes. We'll talk another day when we're free. Mrs. Yao echoed and immediately followed Mrs. Lu. Zhou took this opportunity to leave but didn't go with them. Instead, she returned to her own home to prepare a hot pot. She didn't forget Gu Qingrui said that Gu Qingxi would come for a hot pot meal today. So she got busy after she got home. She prepared some other dishes and knew Gu Qingxi needed to eat more, so she cooked 2 bags of rice noodles. When it was almost noon, she prepared a pot of charcoal. However, there was no copper pot at their home, so she had to use a small iron pot instead. On the other hand, Gu Qingrui couldn't leave as easily as she did. His clan surrounded him, and he had to explain chili and vegetable planting to them. It wasn't until the smell of rice came from the patriarch's house that they took their leave. After he came out, Gu Qingxi immediately chased after him. Hi, third brother. Let's go. I didn't forget you. Gu Qingrui smiled and rubbed his head. He then looked at Gu Qingji and Gu Qingya and said, why don't you two come together? Gu Qingji and Gu Qingya looked at each other and shook their heads, and they could tell he was just being polite. Besides, Zhou wouldn't be able to sit at the table if they were all there, making them rude guests. All right, another day then. Gu Qingrui said as he brought Gu Qingxi home. He smelled a spicy fragrance wafting over him as soon as he entered the courtyard. Qingxi sniffed and exclaimed, it smells so good. No wonder the business of Grassland Taste Restaurant is so good. Come on, you glutton. Gu Qingrui brought him into the house after that. It just so happened that Zhou was almost done preparing. The 3 washed their hands and began to eat. Zhou looked at Gu Qing, who liked spicy foods so much that he kept eating faster even though he struggled with the spice. She smiled and handed him a cup of herbal tea. If it's too spicy, it'll be much better if you use the chopsticks to force the spicy soup out of the ingredients. Gu Qingxi nodded repeatedly. I know, third sister-in-law, but the mutton is just too delicious, not gamey yet tender. Also, the noodles are just splendid, chewy, and al dente. The couple saw that he was eating happily and didn't try to dissuade him anymore. Instead, they tried their best to feed him. After he was full, the couple started eating. Once lunch was over, Zhou was afraid that his throat couldn't withstand the spice, so she made him a pot of chrysanthemum tea with rock sugar. In the afternoon, the 2 brothers spent some time playing chess while Zhou wrapped and froze some dumplings. Gu Qingxi didn't eat there that night. When he left, Zhou gave him the remaining hot pot base and some dipping sauce for him to bring back. Fortunately, the people at the old mansion hadn't finished up their mutton, so everyone had a taste of the hot pot with vegetables and steamed buns. The next day was traditionally a day for the daughter to return to her mother's house. However, the woman who had married into the Gu family couldn't go back, and there wasn't anyone else coming over. Thus, the couple finally had a good night's sleep. They only got up when Zhuang was hungry and kept barking. After breakfast, they heard a burst of laughter from next door. The couple was startled, knowing Sister Tian didn't laugh like this. Could they have guests over? Just as they were filled with curiosity, they saw Sister Tian sending a person dressed as a matchmaker past their house. It seems that Brother Tian's time has come. Zhou paused for a moment and mentioned. Indeed, it's about time. Brother Tian is a good and capable person. Now that he has a stable income, finding a suitable partner in the village wouldn't be difficult. Just watch. There will be lots of people coming to visit them over the next few days. Gu Qingrui replied with a smile. Chapter 173 Gu Zi. After lunch, the couple wanted to take Zhuang for a walk in the mountains. Just as they were about to leave, Mrs. Wang brought a haggard-looking but well-dressed young woman to their doors. Zhou was stunned but still greeted her. Hello, Auntie. Please come in. She invited them into the house. Gu Qingrui had no choice but to tie Er Zhuang back to his post and head to the kitchen to boil some water, which caused Er Zhuang to bark sadly. After they returned to the living room and sat down, Mrs. Wang introduced them to each other. Zhou only realized that the young woman was Mrs. Wang's eldest daughter, Gu Zi. She quickly pushed some dried fruits she had prepared to them and said, "Oh, big sister, it's you. When did you come back?" "Just this morning. We've come to find Qingrui and request that he do a checkup for her." When Madame Wang saw that Gu Qingrui wasn't around, she couldn't help but ask, "Does Qingrui have something to do?" "He's most likely in the kitchen boiling some water. Wait a moment while I'll take his place." After Zhou finished speaking, she got up and walked out. When she reached the kitchen, she saw that Gu Qingrui had filled a pot with water and was about to light the fire. She quickly went forward to stop him. "That young woman is your eldest uncle's daughter, Gu Zi. She's here as a patient today, so you'd better go and take a look while I make tea. I'll go over then." Before entering the living room, Gu Qingrui took a ladle of warm water from the stove pot and placed it in a basin. After he left, Zhou entered her interspace and made a pot of boiling water with her electric kettle. She used this boiled water to make a pot of Longjing tea and returned to the living room. After pouring a cup of tea for everyone, Zhou sat next to Mrs. Wang and waited with her for the results. After a few minutes, Gu Qingrui stopped and looked at Gu Zi thoughtfully. "Big sister, when did you feel you were not feeling well?" "About 3 months ago, but I can't remember the exact time. My problem was confirmed 2 months ago, as I've visited a few doctors. They all said it was anemia, and no serious illness was diagnosed." Gu Zi frowned and replied. She continued, "Have you found out the reason for my sickness?" Gu Qingrui replied, "If I'm not wrong, you've been poisoned by a slow-acting poison. However, I'm not knowledgeable enough to confirm what kind of poison it is." "What? Poisoned?" Mrs. Wang stood up in shock and looked at Gu Zi, asking, "Is anyone bullying you? Who wants to harm you? Tell me, and mother will tear them apart." "Mother, let's go back." Gu Zi was stunned before smiling bitterly. She went forward to help her mother up to leave. Gu Qingrui looked at her forbearing expression and knew she had something on her mind. She probably knew what was going on. But it was obvious that she didn't want to be treated, so he persuaded her, "Big sister, if you don't get treatment in time, I'm afraid you won't live for more than 3 months. You have to think about your children, too." "What? 3 months?" Mrs. Wang's legs went limp, and she looked at Gu Qingrui in shock. She staggered, pounced on him to grab his arm, and begged, "Qingrui, can you cure her?" Gu Qingrui quickly helped her to sit down, but before he could speak, Gu Zi stated, "Mother, there's no need for that and let's go back. Don't make things difficult for Qingrui. You stupid girl, do you know something? Tell me, and mother will make the decision for you." Mrs. Wang looked at her unworried appearance and demanded angrily. "No, mother, Gu Zi hesitated. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui was certain that this wouldn't be a simple matter. He could only say, "Big sister, would you be willing to leave a few drops of your blood here? I'll try to test to see if I can find out what kind of poison it is." Chapter 174 Waiting for the results. "Of course, we will give you the blood. Your elder sister just turned 25, and she's in the prime of her life. She can't just die like this." Mrs. Wang firmly nodded. After that, she dragged her daughter to Gu Qingrui. Seeing this, Gu Zi did not dispute further. Gu Qingrui immediately turned around and went to the west room. He took out a small porcelain bottle and a small blade to take 3 drops of blood from her finger. "I'll try to find out what poison it is as soon as possible." "All right, thank you. I'll leave now and wait for your news." Let us know as soon as you have any results. Mrs. Wang turned to leave. Mother, let's go. Guzi turned around and walked out with Mrs. Wang after saying their goodbyes. Zhou saw they had something on their minds and didn't ask them to stay. Instead, she sent them out and placed Gu Qingrui in her interspace after returning to the house. She then brought Zhuang up the mountain. Although the mountain was pretty barren and desolate, it shone a lovely golden color under the sun. Sparrows chirping could be heard from time to time, painting a picture full of vitality. When she and her dog arrived at the Mother God Temple halfway up the mountain, Zhou immediately remembered her previous nightmares. She walked in and looked at the shabby Mother God Temple. She wet the ground with water and took a broom to cleaning up the cobwebs near the Mother God statue too. However, she didn't dare to touch the Mother God statue, as she was afraid she would break it into pieces if she did. Finally, she kept her cleaning tools in her interspace and bowed deeply 3 times before leaving the Mother God Temple. She took Zhuang for another walk around the area, and finally, the two reached a river. Through the thin layer of ice, she could see that there were still plenty of large fish in the river. She suddenly got playful and made Zhuang step back. She then lifted a large rock and threw it into the river. Sure enough, the ice layer broke. The fish inside immediately leaped through the hole, and Zhou was shocked to find that some of the big fish looked heavier than 5 pounds. However, after a few big fish lashed their tails around, the ice around them broke. The fish fell back into the river and swam away. But more and more fish were jumping out of the hole, big and small. Woof woof. Zhuang suddenly rushed out, which startled Zhou. She quickly shouted, Zhuang, come back. However, Zhuang had already rushed in. Perhaps it was due to its light body and quick speed, but it didn't break the fine ice layer and brought back a large fish weighing about 3 pounds. When Zhuang returned, it brought the fish to her feet and barked twice, wagging its tail and demanding praise. Zhou patted its head. You're not allowed to go in again. Otherwise, you won't be having dinner tonight. She had all kinds of fish in her interspace, so she didn't want Zhuang to lose his life because of some fish. I never knew that you had such a mischievous side. Qian Zhuang's voice sounded as he came down from the mountain, followed by Gu Erjiang, carrying a hatchet. It's the new year, and you two are going up the mountain to chop firewood? Zhou looked at the hatchet in their hands and asked. Yeah, there hasn't been enough firewood since the new year. So, I've been staying at Brother Qian's house. Otherwise, I'd freeze to death. Gu Erjiang laughed dryly. You just had to be lazy, didn't you? You would have been frozen to death, so let's see if you'll still be this lazy next time. Also, take the fish. Zhou continued. Take this for another dish for tonight's dinner. After that, she led Zhuang down the mountain. Otherwise, ugly rumors might spread if someone else saw them together on the mountain. On the other hand, Qian Zhuang and Gu Hanjiang had their eyes on the fish. As soon as Zhou returned to the village, she saw Tinu and the other children playing a game of catch. Their happy voices lingered around the village for a long time. Thinking about her own childhood, she couldn't help but feel envious. At the same time, she silently promised to give her future child a happy childhood. Chapter 175 Disapproved. When she thought of her future child, she also remembered the child's father, Gu Qingrui. She realized he was still in her interspace and wondered how the test was going. She rushed home, tied Zhuang up, and entered her interspace after locking up. She saw Gu Qingrui coming down from the laboratory on the 2nd floor and quickly asked, "How is it? Did you find out what poison it is?" "No, I can only confirm that the effect of this poison is similar to that of opium. They both ruin the body and corrode nerves." I must go to Dr. Luo to see if he knows what it is. Also, don't wait for me tonight. I'll just stay over in the clinic or our restaurant. That's fine. You should go early, then. Zhou said as she took him out of her interspace. Gu Qingrui left with his first aid kit, while Zhou returned to her interspace and started making clothes for the next spring and summer. After all, she wouldn't have the time when they opened for business soon. On the other hand, Chunhong had just returned from Gu Zixin's place, who was Gu Qingye's biological sister. When she heard that her mother, Widow Hua, was looking for a matchmaker to match her and Tian Zhuang, she immediately rushed in. Mother, if you want to marry him, you can do it yourself. I don't want to marry a man whose wife died. How can you say that? This isn't what I taught you. Widow Hua angrily scolded her. She glared at her, signaling for her to restrain herself. However, Chunhong didn't want to marry Tian Zhuang, so she continued, It's true, and it's not like I can't get married. Why should I marry someone whose wife died? What if he's a jinx? Aren't you afraid that he'll die? You. As Widow Hua was about to say something, the matchmaker immediately smiled and said, I think we should just forget about this. Mr. Tian has no shortage of attractive women pursuing him. After saying that, she glanced at Chunhong with a sneer and hurriedly left. Hey, sister, don't go. Seeing this, Widow Hua knew this was bad and immediately wanted to chase after her. Chunhong immediately stopped her. Mother, why are you chasing after her? I already said I don't want to marry Tian Zhuang. You shut up. Do you know why I haven't remarried in many years and have worked hard to maintain a good reputation? I want to leave a nice impression on us and find you a good family to marry into. But look at you. Do you know that your reputation has been ruined just because of those words you said? If she were to spread those around, how would you find a husband in the future? At this point, Widow Hua's face grew stern. You're not allowed to go near the Gu family anymore. Based on Mrs. Liu's difficult personality, I won't let you marry into their family. I'm marrying Brother Qingye, not Mrs. Liu. Don't you know what happened to Zhou? That's because she isn't Mrs. Liu's real daughter-in-law. Besides, I'm not like Zhou, that pushy, meek girl. You. If she doesn't like you, it'll be easier for her to bully you as your real mother-in-law. Besides, Gu Qingye doesn't have anything. He's judged guilty by the emperor's court, so what's good about that? At this point, Widow Hua paused for a moment before she patiently advised, Tian Zhuang is different. He now has a stable job and no in-laws or children. You can hold the reins of the family once you marry him. It'll help you in the future, and you'll have a good life. Chunhong glared at her after hearing her belittle Gu Qingye and asked, Did the widow of the Tian family ask about me? I knew nothing good would come out of her visits, and you better lessen your contact with her in the future. Widow Hua saw that her daughter still hadn't listened to a single word she said and got anxious. She directly ordered, You're rebelling against me. No matter what, I won't allow you to marry Gu Qingye. Chapter 176 A Scheme, I won't marry Tian Zhuang no matter what. You can marry him if you dare agree on my behalf, as I don't want to be poor for the rest of my life. Chunhong straightened her neck and replied. When she was working in the manor, she saw what the most important thing in village life was. It was land, which was the foundation of not having to worry about food and drink. Therefore, Gu Qingji, who was talented, good-looking, and had a lot of lands, fit her requirements the best. As for Tian Zhuang, although he had a job and no parents or children, he looked like a bear. He still had 3 worthless family members to raise. At most, she wouldn't have to worry about food and drink. She would probably have to save up for a long time if she wanted to buy a decent piece of clothing, which was why she didn't want to marry him. In her daze, she did not notice Widow Hua's face darkening, and her eyes were disappointed. Then, she slapped her daughter's face. It seems like I've spoiled you too much. You. Chunhong covered her face, burning from the slap, and looked at Widow Hua in disbelief. She roared aggrievedly, "You're simply being unreasonable." After that, she turned around and ran out. "Come back here." Widow Hua quickly chased after her. Not only did Chunhong not return, but she ran faster and faster. Finally, she rushed into the Tian family's house and roared at Sister Tian, who was in a daze. "You should give up. I will never marry into your family, even if I die." After that, she turned around and ran up the mountain. Sister Tian was stunned and confused. What was she talking about? However, she soon remembered that her best friend, Widow Hua, had asked her what she thought of Chunhong. To be honest, she didn't like Chunhong's arrogant personality, but for her friend's sake, she only nodded and praised her daughter. She hadn't expected, she ran after her immediately, but her heart skipped a beat when she saw her running up the mountain. She was afraid that something would happen to Chunhong, and she couldn't explain it to her friend. Thus, she had no choice but to turn and run to Widow Hua's house. She had no idea she'd run into Widow Hua when she turned into an alley she had to pass through. She quickly pulled onto her and urged, Chunhong ran up the mountain. "What? That wretched girl is getting more and more disobedient." At this point, Widow Hua wanted to ask Sister Tian to help chase after her daughter. However, when she thought about how Chunhong rejected her, she immediately swallowed the words on the tip of her tongue. She just thanked Sister Tian and ran up the mountain. Sister Tian shook her head when she saw this. At the same time, she was glad that Chunhong did not agree to the marriage, or she might have harmed her brother. Chunhong's rebellious situation also reminded her that she shouldn't spoil her daughter too much, or it would be troublesome in the future. After Chunhong ran into the mountains, she didn't walk far before she met Gu Qingji and Gu Qingye. When she saw the two brothers checking out the mountain, her eyes flashed, and she had an idea. She quietly walked over and stopped about 100 feet away from them. She deliberately twisted her foot and shouted, "Oh, help." She shouted a few more times just in case they couldn't hear her. The Gu brothers, busy digging through the soil, paused when they heard the shouts. They looked at each other and ran up the mountain, where they saw Chunhong struggling to get up. The two brothers looked at each other, but neither stepped forward. This was because they had seen too many conspiracies and schemes for marriage in the capital. Chunhong had been trying to get close to Gu Qingye all this time, but the Gu family didn't want her. So, both brothers felt this was probably another trick of hers, trying to take advantage of an opportunity to cling to Gu Qingye. Chapter 177. Exposing Heartwarming wanted to cry at that moment. She tried to fake a twisted ankle, so she gently tilted her foot. She didn't expect that she would twist it too much, and her entire ankle swelled up in an instant. She was in such pain that she didn't care about her schemes anymore. She yelled for help and cried for real at the same time. "This seems to be real," Gu Qingye said as he listened to her anguished cries. "Then go find her mother or a strong woman to assist her," Gu Qingji decided. "That's true. Be careful, big brother, and don't fall into her trap." Gu Qingye ran into the village after that. Gu Qingji, on the other hand, walked toward Chunhong. At this time, Chunhong also noticed Gu Qingji. Seeing that it wasn't the person she had been thinking about, she cried as she demanded, "Why is it you? Why? Are you here waiting for someone?" Gu Qingji asked with a faint smile. How could that be? I just didn't expect it to be Brother Gu." Chunhong replied with an awkward smile. "That's good. I was afraid that I would ruin your plans." After Gu Qingji finished speaking, he sat 3 meters away from her. At the same time, he was certain she was here to set up a trap for Gu Qingye. What a pity, her acting skills were wasted because she ran her mouth. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. Seeing her grimace as she moved, he knew she had twisted her ankle for real and that she was a ruthless person willing to do anything for her goal. Chunhong tried getting up a few times but only ended up in more pain. She could only ask for help. Brother Gu, I beg you to help me up. Let's just wait, Qingye has returned to the village to call for help. Besides, even if you stand up, you need someone to support you. I'm not suited to do that. But don't worry, I'll stay here and help you drive away any wild animals that might come. Gu Qingji assured her while shaking his head. You. When Chunhong saw how he avoided her like the devil, she was so furious that her leg hurt even more. She stayed silent after that. She was also afraid of being seen by others if he helped her. She didn't want to be Gu Chengxi's concubine. On the other end, Gu Qingye hadn't run far when he bumped into Widow Hua, who immediately came forward. Auntie, you've come at the right time. Chunhong sprained her ankle on the mountain. Come with me. She sprained her ankle. Is it serious? I'm not sure. We didn't want to cause a misunderstanding, so we didn't go up to take a look. You guys, yes, my big brother is nearby. I ran down to look for someone to help her. Widow Hua was upset when she heard that. It was one thing for her to disagree with her daughter's marriage to Gu Qingye, but she didn't want her daughter to be avoided like the plague. It seemed that this marriage was impossible. She would take advantage of the fact that she couldn't walk with her sprained ankle to persuade her to give up. When the two arrived, they saw Gu Qingji standing on a stone and looking into the distance. As for Chunhong, she was sitting on the hard ground and still struggling. She had to move as she was lying on the cold ground and was afraid she would freeze to death. Widow Hua's heart ached when she saw this. She quickly ran down and asked, "How's your injury? Is it serious?" "Mother, I'm in pain." When Chunhong saw her, she immediately threw herself into her arms and wailed pitifully. When Widow Hua heard this, she immediately rolled up her daughter's trousers a little to take a look. Her nose twitched, and tears streamed down her face when she saw her ankle swollen like a steamed bun. However, she couldn't let the two Gu brothers laugh at her now. She helped her daughter up quickly and said, "Let's go. Mother will help you quickly find a doctor." Ouch, lighter, lighter. It hurts so much. Chunhong cried out in pain while standing up, and the pain was so intense that she couldn't help but shed tears. Chapter 178 Experiment. Because Chunhong couldn't move her legs, Widow Hua had no choice but to bend over and carry her daughter. Fortunately, walking from her to the foot of the mountain wasn't too difficult, and the two women quickly went down the mountain. However, Chunhong still cried out in pain the entire way. As they left, the two brothers hiding behind a large rock emerged. Gu Qingji heard Chunhong's cries, gradually getting further away. He turned his head and teased, "The girl deliberately suffered such a heavy injury in order to get close to you. Isn't her love beautiful? Why? Your heart aches." Gu Qingye glared at him and retorted, "What does it have to do with me? She's here for you," Gu Qingji said as they went down the mountain. After Widow Hua went down the mountain, she carried Chunhong to Gu Shengru's house and knocked on it. However, even after knocking for a long time, she only heard a dog barking, and no one opened the door. At that moment, Sister Tian walked out and saw the mother and daughter's sorry state. She paused momentarily before quickly going forward to support Chunhong. "Sister Hua, what's wrong with Chunhong? She twisted her leg. Is there no one in Dr. Gus' house?" Widow Hua inquired, panting heavily. Dr. Gu shouldn't be at home. I saw him rushing out while drying the cabbage in the courtyard. As for Zhou, I'm not sure. By the way, do you guys want to wait for Dr. Gu at my home? Asked Sister Tian. Without waiting for Widow Hua to speak, Chunhong pushed Sister Tian away. No. Mother, let's use the ice at home to reduce the swelling and wait for Dr. Gu to come back. Alright, let's go home. Widow Hua could only reply with a dry laugh. Sister Tian looked at Chunhong's attitude and remembered her previous outbursts, so she didn't insist on their stay. After they left, she shook her head in pity. It seemed that Sister Hua's life wouldn't be easy in the future. Zhou looked at the sky after she finished her work and exited her interspace. Noticing that the sky had turned dark, she went to the kitchen to cook dinner. After she was done, she left a portion for Gu Qingrui and kept it warm in a pot. She went back to her room to sleep after that. She thought Gu Qingrui wouldn't be coming back tonight, so she was surprised when he rushed back in the middle of the night. Zhou looked at him in surprise and asked, Rui, didn't you say that you wouldn't come back if it were too late? I'm in a hurry to do an experiment. Send me into your interspace after I finish eating dinner. Go back to your room, and I'll go to the kitchen to get you your food. After Zhou finished speaking, she took a small flashlight and went to the kitchen. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui took her offer and went into their house to wash his face with cold water, refreshing himself. After that, she brought the food to him, and the two entered her interspace. Gu Qingrui carried the food and sat at the dining table. Babe, help yourself. I'll be busy here today, so you don't have to wait for me. That's fine, but you must take care of your health. Her poison isn't lethal, so there's no need to rush. Gu Qingrui nodded, then lowered his head to eat. Zhou was no longer sleepy after getting this, so she simply collected some wild duck eggs and bird nests. After she was done, she washed the duck eggs and mixed lime into them to make century eggs. When she was done, Gu Qingrui still didn't come down. She had no choice but to leave her interspace and was surprised to find the sun high in the sky. She tidied up the house and unlocked the door. Not long after, Sister Tian walked over. Sister, you're up. Is Dr. Gu back? Sister Hua's daughter, Chunhong, twisted her ankle yesterday and has been waiting for Dr. Gu. She's been here several times throughout the night. Is it serious? He came back late last night and hasn't woken up yet. Quite. I saw her ankle was bruised and swollen to the size of a steamed bun. Chapter 179 Antidote. Alright, I'll ask him to come over after we're done with breakfast. Zhou said. Okay, I'll leave you to your stuff. After Sister Tian finished speaking, she turned around and went home. Zhou turned around and went to the kitchen. She first entered the interspace and saw Gu Qingrui still busy in the laboratory, so she didn't interrupt him and went cooking. When she returned from her cooking, Gu Qingrui was already sitting at the side with his eyes closed and resting. She said, let's eat, and we'll talk after we finish the rest. Alright, let's have our meal first. Gu Qingrui agreed and left the interspace with her. After they had their fill, Zhou told him about Chunhong's sprain. Do you want to go and take a look? Yeah, I'll go out and get a breeze of fresh air. I feel like I've walked into a dead end. Go ahead, and you'd better have a good sleep when you come back before continuing. Zhou reminded him as she began to clean up the dishes. Gu Qingrui went to Widow Hua's place and went to sleep in the interspace after he returned. Zhou was afraid that more people would come, so she locked her door and went into the mountains with Zhuang Air. When they were deep in the mountains, she brought Air Zhuang into her interspace and let him go around to play. Meanwhile, she took out some soybeans and green beans and went to the workshop to make some yuba and vermicelli using her machines. After all, with the progress of the Manor's workshop, even the slightest delay would result in a shortage of goods. After she was done, she made a pot of beef bone, tendon, and meat soup. She planned to turn this into a pot of sour beef soup when she returned home. After she was done, she called Zhuang back, and the two left the space. She just happened to encounter a wild rooster and 3 hens looking for food in the grass. Thus, she immediately took out an air gun and shot the rooster's head. At the same time, Zhuang pounced on the fattest hen and bit its neck, scaring the other 2 hens away. When Zhou saw this, she went forward and picked up the 2 chickens. "Let's go, Zhuang. I'll make you some chicken stew tonight." After that, she and her dog walked down the mountain. By the time they reached the foot of the mountain, the sun had already set. From afar, she saw Mrs. Wang wandering around at the entrance, and she paused for a moment before quickening her pace. "Auntie, do come in and sit," Zhou offered as she took out a key and opened her door. Mrs. Wang shook her head. "It's fine. I'm just here to ask how Shengruo's progress is going, as my daughter has to return tomorrow morning." "Well, he went to the clinic today to try making an antidote, but I don't know the specific situation. I'll have him look for you when he returns." "Can he come over regardless of whether the antidote can be made?" "If there isn't an antidote, giving her a prescription to recuperate her body first is fine too." "All right, I'll remember that," Zhou affirmed, and she handed the hen to her. "I got this from the mountain just now. Take it back and make a bowl of chicken soup for her." "No need. Just take it. We can't finish 2 chickens," Zhou insisted as she handed the hen to her. Mrs. Wang thought of her daughter's weak state and took it in the end. After thanking Zhou, Mrs. Wang returned home. In the evening, Zhou made 4 dishes, a sour beef soup, a chicken mushroom stew, stir-fried celery, and a plate of mixed radish salad. Of course, Zhuang was rewarded with beef soup with some bones, meat, and 2 steamed buns. When she entered the interspace, she saw Gu Qingrui sitting on the sofa on the first floor, leisurely drinking some tea and snacking on some beef jerky. "Look at you, you've made the antidote?" she asked with a smile. Chapter 180 Living Up to Expectations. Gu Qingrui nodded and smiled. "That's right. I just got it done less than 20 minutes ago. Let's go out and celebrate then," Zhou exclaimed as she pulled him out of her interspace. Gu Qingrui saw the dishes on the table and said happily, "I guess we are really celebrating. You've made some chicken stew for me." "Of course. Let's hurry up and eat, and we'll head to your eldest uncle's house. His daughter is leaving tomorrow, so we have to go there by today. Shouldn't we prepare some gifts?" "Yeah, we do. Isn't there some ginseng slice in the interspace someone collected before? Let's bring them a small jar of ginseng slices, some blood-replenishing medicine you made, and 2 bottles of skin cream. That should be enough, right?" "Of course. She's the wife of a mayor and wouldn't lack anything else." Gu Qingrui nodded his head in agreement. He passed her a drumstick, and the couple started eating. After the meal, the 2 took the antidote and the gifts they had prepared, locked up, and rushed to the patriarch's house. When she arrived, the family had just finished dinner and was idly chatting. In Mrs. Wang's arms was an unfamiliar little girl of about 7 years old. If Zhou wasn't mistaken, she was Gu Zi's eldest daughter. A young woman was also at the side, holding a little boy in her arms. It was Gu Chenjin's wife and son, Mrs. Fong and Barney. When the patriarch saw them, he stood up and greeted them warmly. "Oh, you guys are here. Have you 2 eaten?" "We have. We came over after having dinner." Gu Qingrui spoke as he set the items in his hands on the table. Let's sit down and talk. The patriarch invited them to sit. Qingrui, have you made the antidote? Mrs. Wang looked at Gu Qingrui. Mother, there's no rush. Don't keep urging Qingrui. Gu Zi spoke quickly. To be honest, she didn't have high hopes. After all, even the imperial physicians wouldn't be able to find a cure for a poison of unknown origins. Well, what did you know? I did it, and am here to give you the antidote. However, this antidote cannot be taken all at once. It has to be taken separately over 3 days, 3 times a day, and 2 pills each time. Gu Qingrui instructed as he personally handed the antidote to Gu Zi. Thank you, Qingrui. Can this really wholly remove the poison? Gu Zi clutched the medicine bottle tightly as she choked with emotion. Yes, but since your body has already been damaged, you need some time to recuperate. Could you also give me a prescription for that? I don't trust anyone else. You're being a little paranoid. To be honest, if you want to take care of your body, you first have to be good at distinguishing between friends and enemies. Otherwise, you'll be tricked again. Gu Qingrui advised her. Sigh, the patriarch sighed heavily after hearing this. The others also fell silent. Gu Qingrui saw that everyone had stopped talking and didn't ask any more questions. He stood up and said, It's getting late, and we wish you a safe journey tomorrow. Uncle, we'll be going back now, he said to the patriarch. The clan leader thought of the troubles in Gu Zi's family and had no intention of holding the couple back. He nodded and thanked them, saying, In the future, come over, and I will thank you again. Chen Zhen, send them off, will you? All right. Gu Chen Zhen responded and then stood up to send them out. He asked, Qingrui, you know how to play chess, right? We're free during the new year, so why don't you come for a bout of chess together when you're free? All right, sure. We'll be heading back now. Gu Qingrui said his farewells as he walked back with Zhou Ying. The couple was busy in the interspace for the next few days or out for visits, and their everyday lives were quite relaxed. Of course, Gu Qingrui would occasionally receive patients who sought his consultations. Chapter 181 Fireworks 1. In the blink of an eye, it was the 6th day of the new year, and they opened for business. However, business was slow in the new year, and the idle and relaxed days ended on the 15th. Because of the fireworks show, the town was bustling with people. Zhou Ying and Gu Qingrui went to their respective shops early in the morning to get busy. Zhou Ying and Chen Yang rolled out a lot of sweet dumplings, planning to fry them at night to join in the festival. All kinds of stalls were set up from the afternoon until the evening. The street, which was already narrow, was completely congested. They set up a small stall to sell the sweet dumplings. Zhou Ying also requested that lanterns be specially made with the big words, fried sweet dumplings, on them to be eye-catching on the night street. Candied gourd, sweet and sour candied gourd. 3 coppers for 1, 5 coppers for 2. When Zhou Ying heard this, she and Sun Hongliang went out to buy a bunch for everyone. Just as she was about to turn around, she felt that someone was touching her money pouch. She immediately grabbed the hand and looked down. It was a skinny 7 or 8-year-old child wearing beggar's clothes, looking at her with a face of panic. Let's go. We'll talk about why you're stealing. Zhou Ying said as she grabbed the candied gourd in one hand and dragged him to her store with the other. When the child saw this, he immediately frowned and cried out, Help! There are human traffickers. Please save me. It seems like you're familiar with the business. Someone must have taught you before. Zhou Ying's grip tightened. Sun Hongliang looked at the child and said, Kid, you've mistakenly targeted the wrong person. No one in this area doesn't know Manager Zhou, so no one will care even if you scream your lungs out. The child shouting at the top of his lungs was stunned for a moment and glanced around. Sure enough, no one was coming to help him. Thinking of that, he raised his hand and tried to bite Zhou Ying's hand. Zhou Ying had to retract her hand, and the child immediately took the opportunity to disappear into the crowd. Seeing this, Zhou Ying had no choice but to return to the store empty-handed. She asked Sun Hongliang to put away the candied gourd in oil paper before asking, "Didn't we take care of all the little beggars in the town? Why is there more?" During the new year, a small group of refugees came to town. Could he be one of them? Another possibility is that someone previously hiding somewhere took advantage to steal today. Sun Hongliang spoke with uncertainty. Zhou Ying looked at the busy street and said, "There are crooks mixed in with the honest folks tonight, and it's easy for something to happen. We must be careful." "Understood, boss. I'll get the band of children to come over, they're smarter than adults." Sun Hongliang assured her as he called for a child beggar guarding the ventilation fan, giving him a task. The child beggar immediately took off his vest and hat and ran out. Seeing this, Zhou Ying went to the back and reminded everyone to be more vigilant tonight. At night, business was booming, especially at their store that sold fried sweet dumplings. 888 dumplings were sold out in less than an hour. After dinner, most of everyone went to the dock to watch the fireworks, and the street was much quieter. When everyone had finished, Zhou Ying handed out the candied gourds, each with a stick. After they finished, Gu Wen smiled and asked, "Mistress, we're almost done here. Can we go to the river to watch the fireworks? I heard there are also activities such as praying to the gods, lion dancing, and so on. At midnight, there will also be all kinds of fireworks, and it will be a beautiful night." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.